Hey there, community. My name is Boo, Community Evangelist with the F5 DevCentral team, and looking forward to chatting with you all today in the community here on DevCentral Connects. We have a couple guests today, actually, to talk about common server hardware and running big IP on top of that hardware. So that should be pretty interesting as far as the conversation goes. We will bring them on in just a moment here, but a couple things that I did want to go through. DevCentral Connects is in support of the DevCentral community, and you can find this community at community.f5.com. On there, you'll find our technical forums, our technical articles, our code share. We have some industry chat on there as well, and we have events that are happening on there as well. So a couple of things that I wanted to go over just before we get into chatting about any of the topics today is actually, if you head over to community.f5.com, I want to feature a couple things. And one of those things is this events tab. If you go over to this events tab, you can see all the things that are happening in the broader F5 community and in the DevCentral community as well. And we have a community lab coming up. It's actually pretty quick. This is coming up on Tuesday, December 13th. Myself and Aubrey will be hosting and teaching this automation and orchestration toolchain 212 lab, automate application deployments with Big IP and AS3 or Application Services 3. This is going to be a lab where we can run it asynchronously. So we'll actually open the lab for 72 hours. I won't be there live for 72 hours, but we'll kick things off with a bit of a live session, talk through what we're going through in the lab and get you started and set up on the lab. And then otherwise it's self-led. So you'll have a lab manual. You can go through the lab on your own, but at the same time, we'll actually open up a thread on the DevCentral forums, and then you can ask your questions on there. And if need be, we can jump on live and we can talk about stuff as well. We have lots of options there. So just wanted to highlight that. And another thing that I will highlight actually is that we have groups on DevCentral. And so along the DevCentral navigation bar, if you go along the top, there's community groups, and there's a group called DevCentral Connects, and you want to stay tuned in on there as well. And the reason why you want to do that is that, first of all, we discussed the show, the live stream on there. And so every week we'll have a thread about the show. So you'll find all of the links that we're actually going to discuss on the show inside of that thread. And what you can do is you can kind of pre-engage with us and talk about the topics before we even get on the live stream. So if you have something that you wanted to bring up, we can actually talk about it on the show on there. So last week we had a couple things. This week I had a post or a poll on LinkedIn about the Neuralink announcements. And so we can talk about that later on when we talk about the news later today. But we have some information about our guests that are on there as well. So that is worth checking out ahead of time. And one more thing I'll mention about the advantage of joining the DevCentral Connects group on DevCentral is that once in a while we have pop-up shows, and Jason is running these pop-up shows right now for live coding. So when Jason, he's always got ideas popping out of his head, and he's got ideas for improving iRules or things that he wants to discuss with the community about iRules or other coding stuff as well. And so if you check out the DevCentral Connects group, he'll actually give you some advanced notification when he's doing those pop-up shows. And you can actually, he has it set up so you can jump on live with him and code with him in VS Code, which is pretty cool. So I think you should look at that this week if you are interested in those pop-up shows. So you join DevCentral or the DevCentral community. It's free to join. You just sign in with an email address, and then head over to the groups, and you'll find the DevCentral Connects group on there, and you can be a part of that. One more thing that I will talk about as well is that just recently, a couple of videos that we did have come out on the DevCentral YouTube channel, and you should be subscribed to that, because you'll also get notifications there on when those pop-up shows happen. But a couple of the videos that have recently come out have been lightboards and brightboards. And so I've been doing these brightboard lessons where I draw digitally on a screen and talk through certain subjects. And so last week, we had one that was released around distributed cloud bot defense, an F5 product that you can actually integrate with your Amazon CloudFront deployments. And so that one is worth checking out. I also did one on Anycast versus global server load balancing, and just talking through those two concepts and where you might want to use one over the other. And then today's subject that we will talk about in just a few moments is actually running big IP on common server hardware, namely on a Dell server or an HP server. And so Peter Silva did a lightboard on that subject as well. Lightboards is still a thing. I mean, it is it's analog, and Peter Silva is still a master of communications. Nothing has changed there. And so you want to check that out and go through that topic. Also, actually, one more thing that I wanted to bring up here is if you go to community.f5.com and check out in the technical forums, our colleague Leslie Herbutis does a, where is it now? Let me find Leslie on here. She does a community highlights for the week. Sorry for the silence here while I find this. Yeah, she does a community highlights. So this was just published yesterday, and she talks through some things that were happening in the community. So she also gives the tip that you should be joined to the DevCentral Connects group as well to be notified of these pop-up shows that Jason will be doing. And then a number of other things that were highlights within the community, some contributions by our community members. So please check out the community highlights as well. So that being all said, let me get this off of the screen here, and I'm going to bring on Aubrey King in just a moment here. There he is. Hey, Aubrey, how's it going?
Not bad. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Last week, we actually talked about some changes that are happening with DevCentral Connects, and one of the things is Jason is really focusing and doubling down on some of these live coding efforts. And Aubrey, you have been doubling down on, I mean, you were already doubled down anyways on security-focused topics, releasing a security podcast in conjunction with the F5 CERT and the F5 Labs teams, and this month in security and this week in security. So all those things that you have going on. And so there's always security every week. And so you wanted to bring up some this week in security, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's funny how that works, because if anyone hasn't seen This Month in Security, I definitely highly recommend it. Of course, I'm biased for sure. But the idea behind that is we really filter through a lot of community news and kind of maybe low level, if you will, news articles from SIRT and kind of bubble them up so that the biggest events of the month get talked about with myself and with F5 Labs as well. Most of the time we get to actually integrate some of Labs's findings into what we're talking about in these in these news articles as well. So for me, it's a rather exciting vantage point, right? I get to see these things from start to kind of finish, where you guys consume all this in whatever format you want, whether it's a long YouTube video, a long podcast, or clips at the as we go through the month.
Fantastic. So this week we've got some This Week in Security.
That's right. And one thing to note, of course, this week's editor, is Arvin F. So the user is Arvin F. If you have questions on this, that's one of the beautiful things about DevCentral, right? If you have questions, you can just ask the community member. So Arvin F is a community member, and if you have questions on this, he's definitely here to be hit up. Now, if we kind of scroll down to the bottom, he had a very, very long editorial this week, which is not necessarily typical, but it depends really on the engineer that is going to give us the news for the week. So the first thing here really is we've got this is ancient CVEs, right? We've been having if anyone thinks a CVE, you patch it, you forget about it, and it's over. Well, it's not over. We find that a lot of the CVEs right now are from 2017 and even older. I was talking to you, Boo, earlier about a hack that we talked about that is 20 years old in SQLite. But this one is only a few years back, and it's in the BOA web server from Microsoft, which has been deprecated. If you want to know more information or to know if you're impacted, or if you don't know what BOA is, it's an IoT-based web services platform from Microsoft. Again, deprecated, but it still impacts thousands of devices. Go check that for more info. And if you scroll down a little bit more, we've got also the Aurora botnet, which is fairly new. That is gaining a bit of traction now in terms of architecture and whatnot. If you want to dig deeper, again, That's what This Week in Security is for. Moving on, we've got an article on breaking and fixing and re-breaking Kerberos authentication in Windows Server. There's also a bit here on Twitter account amnesty. I think anyone who's been paying attention to the news has seen that some of these accounts are coming back. And there's a little snippet on kind of how that's being done. So it's a not to be missed one. There's also a hack that ended up occurring with DraftKings and more guidance from CISA. We always have guidance from CISA. So if you have any interest there, check it out. It's a big news week, actually. And you can always find the latest security news right on community.f5.com.
That's fantastic. Lots of great info on there. I'm going to check out a couple of those, actually. The Twitter stuff has been interesting over a little while. It's getting weird.
Yeah, it's getting real weird.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thanks for that, sharing that, Aubrey. So everybody head over to community.f5.com to check that out. And without further ado, we're going to bring on our guests for today. So we've got Matt and we've got Steve joining us today. How's it going, guys?
Very good.
Good. How are you, Boo?
Fantastic. Very good. Matt and Steve are both F5ers. They're part of our business development group, and they are solution architect and solution engineer, principal solution engineer, respectively. Right. Did I get that right?
But we don't have the sweaters. That's what we're missing.
Yeah.
No memo?
Sweaters.
Come on.
No memo. Didn't get the memo.
Oh, man. And actually, Steve's in Canada, too, so I don't know what happened there. In Ottawa, of all places. That's a place where you really need the sweaters.
True.
No doubt.
Cool.
I thought Canadians got 2 sweaters. No?
one's in the wash just to cycle through them. Yeah. Okay, so thanks for joining us, guys. You guys have been working on a bit of an endeavor with common server hardware. First endeavor being with the Dell and the HP servers. Maybe you guys can tell us a little bit about this project you guys have been working on.
Sure. I'll start, and Matt can jump in at any point. So we wanted to take some real industry blue chip solutions. So right now we're going to talk about Dell, but we're also testing HP in the lab, and we want to buy some hardware and see how big IP could be. The F5 software could run on it in terms of a mainstream server. So what we're looking for is not sort of a skunkworks project like a Cray supercomputer. We got the Dell R650. It's a very popular box. We populate it with the appropriate CPU, and we put in the appropriate amount of memory that would reflect a common purchase. And we also want to see how long it would take to arrive on the loading dock, and we were able to get it. We specifically didn't pick anything internal to the box that would slow down delivery, and we were able to get this in a matter of business days. And we very quickly put on the F5 software and just saw what can we do out of the box. So we utilized some publicly available test and measurement software from Ixia, the perfect storm, and we put it to work. And we were quite surprised without any optimizations whatsoever with Intel 25 gig interfaces. We were able to push over 8 gigabits per second across big IP. And in terms of transactions, we were able to actually do over 500,000 HTTP transactions per second with a full layer 7 server emulated, with a basic I rule. And it was quite surprising that perhaps not surprising, it was quite welcome to see what we were able to do without any optimization in basically 30 minutes of turn up. So maybe Matt, what were your impressions of this result?
Yeah, the other thing I would mention is that we actually did use a hypervisor OS. We used VMware vSphere as our testing platform. So we didn't install it directly on the box. We used the most common hypervisor to use today in the open market. When we did the testing, we knew what we were probably going to get out of the box directly. And as Steve said, we did a test initially unconfigured, just bare OS. We got the Dell disk, we installed it with the hypervisor, fresh and clean, put it into vSphere, did a couple of tweaks like a normal customer would do. We tried to make our tests more what a customer would do in their environment. I have a lot of experience with that because I used to work at VMware. I have a massive VMware background. So we tried to make it as customer centric as possible. And then we ran our tests. And that was kind of our goal. And then after we did our baseline tests, we started tuning it up. We started tweaking a few things that we know that, I knew from my days at VMware to some of the stuff that we learned from internal F5 engineers. And we did those tweaks. And Steve, what were those performance results after we did?
Right after, and again, even the tweaks, which we have a document with screenshots, just follow the arrows. We're talking possibly less than an hour at the most to do these tweaks. We jumped up by 25%. We went from 8 gig to 10 gig, and we were using the 10 gig license. As you're aware, with the F5 software, big IP, you can buy different trim levels to meet the performance and price you're looking for. So you can buy a 1, 3, 5, or 10 gig license. So we put the 10 gig, and we were right on 10 gig. So we think this hardware could probably maybe even go a bit farther if necessary. And in terms of in terms of transactions per second, was even more. It was over 100% increase. We went to 1.2 million HTTP transactions per second. So just very briefly, what we would do is we would tell Ixia to emulate 1,000 users. And so it's coming into the big IP. Behind, we have 72 emulated backend servers, so on the private side. And those users would basically bring up TCP connections, and they would do I believe 100 transactions. If you're really looking for throughput determination, there were very big objects, 5 to 12 kilobyte objects, so a lot of bandwidth. If you're trying to push it in terms of transactional achievement, we use very small, about 128 byte. So that's basically how we were able to derive both throughput and transactional performance.
Yeah, and I saw somebody in the comments section ask if we were using the Intel SmartNICs. We were using the 25 gigabit E810s. So we weren't using them for SRIOV. We weren't using them anything beyond just using the VMXNet driver directly with the big IP in this case. Now, could our numbers have been bigger? Absolutely. We didn't go into the high performance structure where you start getting into like SRIOV, starting to utilize more of the NIC's capability using SmartNIC technology and all of that. We haven't gotten to that phase yet. We are looking towards doing that. I'm very interested in seeing those kinds of results. We just wanted to see if you as a customer needed to, couldn't buy a big IP, hardware because of supply constraints, could you go buy a hypervisor OS with vSphere on it and run and get good results? And that was our aim for this.
Yeah, I loved that question, Daniel. Actually, that was one that I had asked these guys yesterday to see if we could talk about that. You also added on hypervisor, and you thought bare metal. I just wanted to say,
not quite.
As far as the high performance VE though, you have, if you run it on SSD especially, you're taking out so much VirtIO. It's real close to bare metal. So just wanted to give a shout out to the high performance VE folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
This is
actually,
a great use case.
With
Sorry,
that, Matt, are there plans for that high performance to kind of come forth? It looked to me like this was only VMware today, but obviously the high performance requires KVM at this point, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, a little mistaken. So you can do high performance VE both on the VMware platform as well as the KVM platform. I mean, the hypervisor is just the underlying operating system that kind of runs it. It's different, obviously. They do their things a little bit differently from each other, but to get a high performance virtual edition big IP, all you have to do is really tweak it in a specific way that it's going to make it go. Like I said, we kind of went with phase one, just see what we got, get a little bit more performance, max out the 10 gig to its full potential. Getting it to the high performance market, I've done testing both in VMware and in KVM with SRIOV and gotten 40 plus gigabits per second out of a big IP. Like, you can do that once you know how to tweak it. If you add in cards like, what are those things called? The Intel acceleration cards.
Oh my gosh.
QAT cards.
QAT, yeah.
Yeah. If you add a QAT card, and you can get more performance based on that. So something down the line I'm really looking towards doing is some of that more enhanced testing. A lot of our backend engineers do that already, but I want to take their knowledge and I want to make it as public as possible. So that way a normal consumer with a hypervisor can do that work, and it's easy to read and easy to consume.
Excellent aim.
And maybe for just clarifying for folks, when we say high performance VE, if folks aren't familiar with how you would purchase a Big IP Virtual Edition, you can buy a standard, I think what most people would recognize as Big IP Virtual Edition in licenses of 200 meg. I know there's like a couple of variations on smaller ones, but 200 meg, let's start there, 1 gig, 3 gig, 5 gig, and 10 gig. And then what you guys have just kind of dived into is we also have a separate license called the High Performance Edition that is more focused around the CPUs that you unlock as opposed to a limitation on the bandwidth itself.
Yeah.
Just in case folks are going to their sales reps and trying to map this out.
And for giggles, I even ran a test after we did all of our testing here. And just with the basic tweaks that we did in the guide that Steve published, I put the high performance license on it. And just like I said, with the bare tweaks, we got around 15 gigs per second. With like we changed it from a 10 gig license to a high performance. We got that. And that's not even with all the full tweaks. Like that was just the simple tweaks. So you can see how much more we can get out of ours. Once we understand the hypervisor, once we understand the software that runs our software, we can make it better for the environment.
Nice.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, even Intel displayed the high performance virtual edition. I think I want to say 2015 or 2016 at Mobile World Congress at 100 gig. Very tweaked though. That's different. That's extremely tweaked.
Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, the tweaks that we did for this they're all documented. Some of them are simple things like we disabled hyperthreading, and we give the justification. Why did we disable hyperthreading? It's a single application that we're using the box for. It's the Big IP 5 software. We also did things like make it a performant mode at both the BIOS level and at the hypervisor ESXi level, so that we don't have cases where we're continuously waking up the cores. Like we keep them in performance mode. We did some things at the NIC, at the host level, where a single TCP connection can leverage 4 cores, receive side scaling. But we also did virtual NIC optimizations where a virtual NIC can basically talk to 4 different queues on the Intel NIC card, so we can actually access more than one hardware queue. So that's how we can get that extra couple gigabits per second. Obviously, that's the secret. The secrets are all in the document.
Yeah,
fantastic.
And like I said, everything is based on the hypervisor. So we're tweaking based on the hypervisor and its needs to make it work correctly. So that's the piece that we're adding to this equation.
Cool. So the research team has dropped the link to this article in the chat if you are checking this out live right now. If you're not checking this out live, check out the show notes. The show notes are over in the DevCentral Connects group, and you can find all the information on there. You can also find links to get in touch with Steve and Matt if you want to ask them really deep technical questions in their LinkedIn inboxes. I'm sure they'll help you out with that. A better route is actually leaving a comment in the show thread, and we can respond to everything on there as well. Having said that, we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about a couple other things that have come up recently. Actually, one of the things is a thread that I started on the DevCentral forums, which is your 2022 holiday tech debt catch-up. I am very interested to find out what other people are going to be working on if it is a time where things slow down for you. I have a lot of training that has been sitting in my inbox that I'm supposed to actually get done soon. And so I need to work on that and some documentation. And then Daniel, actually, who is watching live right now, I believe he still is, let us know about a couple things that he's working on, TryHackMe and CryptoHack. And I opened those up. Those are pretty cool learning platforms for cybersecurity, so worth checking out. And then otherwise, we've got some news to talk about today. And maybe one of the things that we can talk about here, I just want to jump into this one because everybody's talking about right now. This is OpenAI, their new tool, ChatGPT. Have you guys been playing with this at all?
I haven't. I read what you sent me the other day about it, and I was like, whoa.
I've been enjoying your playing with it for sure.
Mhm.
It's been pretty fun.
fun.
So for folks who are not familiar with this, and I have a link brought up right now, but you might be listening to this via audio podcast, which will be out very, very soon. ChatGPT is a interactive natural language AI bot, basically. So think of like Siri, but Siri where you can ask it some pretty crazy questions and it will return something in very natural language, including code. So there's already, I didn't pull up this article, but there's already a policy update on Stack Overflow saying that do not submit answers that were generated by AI for your code. So I think we got to go on DevCentral. I think we got to update the policy to say don't submit iRules that have been AI generated on there. A couple other interesting use cases here: debugging your code, like inserting code into ChatGPT and then having it debug the code for you. Detecting security vulnerabilities. OpenAI can detect cross-site scripting in here. I don't know like how far it can go, but we gotta realize that at F5 we have technology that's based on artificial intelligence as well. So I don't know exactly how they implement it, but could be some of this on here.
Sure, there's not just some guy in the background just answering the question.
It does take a few moments for it to return an answer. So yeah, it's possible. This one here, I had another article that I didn't insert, but I could insert it as well, is deploy a virtual machine. So this person actually opened up a shell inside of ChatGPT, and then they actually pasted the command, not in this one here, in the other article I'm talking about, they actually pasted a command to launch a Docker container inside of ChatGPT. So you can kind of see where this is going. People are starting to play around, mess around inside of the platform itself, and do weird things or do things that have unintended use cases. Lots of other stuff on there. If you haven't checked this out already, check it out. We'd love to see what you're playing around with this. I think there would be some cool, aside from the fun games that you can play with this thing, there's going to be some cool use cases out of it when you start unlocking the API and mess around. Okay, next one here. Let's go to, actually, we were talking about cars earlier today, and so this one, I don't know if you guys had a chance to run through that. Volkswagen is not on this list, but car hacking. And this was interesting in that they just realized, and I just realized as well, is that Sirius XM is actually a provider not only of satellite radio, but because they have all that connectivity, I guess it made sense for them to actually get into the world of car automation, to the point where they actually are the provider for car automation connectivity for Honda, Nissan, Infiniti, Acura. And through some fuzzing, folks realized that they can, here's the list here: Nissan, Infiniti, Honda, Acura, Fiat, Chrysler, and Toyota. And through some fuzzing, they were able to actually take over somebody's car through their app. So
yeah.
Fix it again tomorrow.
See, what we were talking about earlier is just old school cars not connected.
Yeah. My GTI was definitely not connected to anything except the road.
Yeah. The only thing the Sirius was connected to was an antenna in its own little box that was connected to the stereo. Like, I mean, this is kind of one of those things where when you have everything connected for convenience, it creates more problems potentially down the line. Like, I mean, your car is your most, trusted asset that you have. It helps you get your life to work, your family to wherever they need to go. And it just scares me to see like people can hack into these things and control it just from Sirius FM. Like that to me is just like crazy.
It is a little unnerving, I'll say. That we see that more and more, and there have been some pretty big hacks on some of these platforms too. So
yeah, this is also why I don't own a Tesla either. I'll give whoever wants to, own one of those the credit, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, any of these vehicles can do some pretty similar things to like the core functions that, like I have a Tesla, and some of the things that I would do remotely is warm up my car or start my car or unlock my car or roll down the windows. And at this point, a lot of these cars have those same functions at this point. So any of these where you have your car connected app, yeah, it's possible. And they did this through fuzzing, through actually just doing some sniffing over. Somebody gave them their credentials to their Nissan, and then they installed the Nissan app and did this. So this actually here tells the story, but it tells the story after they actually reported this, and it was fixed by Sirius and stuff like that. So we get to learn from it. We don't get to exploit this one, but it could spark some ideas in folks, depending on how they look at the world.
Wait till Chat GPT gets a hold of this serious information.
Yeah, that's true.
I'd also wonder. Yeah, I'd also wonder, like, as these cars age, like they're not going to get patches forever, and then what becomes of them in that case?
Yeah, that's true. You know what? I would think that you would just cut off the car at that point. Like the car is the client at that point, and you would say, you know what, clients older than 2018, you're cut off from the latest version of the API, perhaps.
Yep.
Which kind of sucks, because your car has an expiry date on it, software wise, not just mechanically wise.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a persistent attack surface. I think that's what they call it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, folks, we are at time today, so let me pull this off. But yeah, thank you very much, Matt and Steve, for joining us today. We do have all of the links in the show notes. We have the links to get in touch with you guys. So we have everything we need to be able to, further our knowledge on installing VE Virtual Edition on common server hardware. So thanks a lot, guys, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, that was fun, Aubrey. We got to chat about a lot of fun stuff today.
Yeah, it was. That was a fun one. I like the new format of the show. It's fun.
Yeah, good times. Just a reminder that we will have more this content available pretty soon. I'm very strongly hinting at this point, where I was kind of lightly hinting at it before, but very strongly hinting that this will be available in an audio podcast format very soon. And also, we've heard everybody as far as what they've liked about the shows and whatnot, realizing that, hey, some of the longer interview stuff might work better in other formats. And so this will kind of talk about things that are happening in the community. The show is for the community and connecting with the community. So we'll talk about the community, and we'll talk about what the community is interested in the broader IT industry. But there's still a need to focus, double down on some of those other topics as well. So we'll have those topics. We'll just format them a little bit differently in the other shows and the stuff that Jason does as well, compartmentalizing them into there. So really excited about the stuff that we'll have going into 2023.
Me too.
Good times. All right. Thanks a lot, folks. If you haven't subscribed already, hit subscribe down below, or join us on community.f5.com, or like us on Twitter or on Facebook or on LinkedIn. We're on all the places. And otherwise, we will see you all next week. Well, thanks for checking out that video. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. While you're down there, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. You might want to check out one of these videos over here. And if you haven't already, go check out community.f5.com. This is where all the DevCentral Connects hosts hang out, as well as the rest of the community. It's free to sign up, and we'll see you there.